Okay, it's 1 p.m. on Monday the 12th of October, and we start off the Wall Street crossover show with Darren Sinden, who is senior market commentator at Admiral Markets, who are the sponsor of this segment or this show. Good afternoon, Darren.
Thank you, Zach. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you after your holiday, I believe. I don't know what that is actually, but I've heard that people take some time off now and again. Presumably you enjoyed it?
Yeah, it was very relaxing and very peaceful.
Right. Today is Columbus Day. I don't know if that means it's a holiday in the US or not a proper holiday.
It's a funny one. It's a sort of a half holiday because some banks are shut, the bond markets are closed, I believe, yet the stock markets are open. So it's a sort of observe it if you want to type holiday. But right. It probably does mean a quieter day. Overall, yeah. Right.
Well, let's look at the data released over the European session, just to take us away from America.
Well, speaking of quieter sessions, there's absolutely no data of any note today whatsoever from Europe. So completely blank page. But we do have some very interesting data points to come later in the week, starting tomorrow with the balance of trade for China. For September, obviously people will be watching these numbers very closely. Both imports and exports, of course, have fallen recently. So everyone's obviously fixated with all things China, so that's going to be watched very closely. Also on Tuesday, we have German inflation data for September, and a whole raft of this. We have CPI, the Consumer Price Index, wholesale prices as well, and the ECB's preferred method of calculating inflation, the Harmonised Index of Consumer Prices, or HICP. We also have inflation data for the UK on Tuesday, PPI, RPI and CPI all being released together. So again, we'll get some idea about how prices are performing here in the UK. And then looking forward to Wednesday, a figure that I'll be watching very closely, Eurozone industrial production for August. And then on Thursday, one for the night hours, but Australian employment data for September will be released then, and obviously that is also a number that many in the currency markets will be watching closely.
Speaking of night owls, I noticed that the Chinese market had a rather strong night.
It did, but remember it had been closed.
It was catching up
for a week. Yeah, I mean 3.5% is still one of its biggest gains in the year, and there were some bullish comments from the People's Bank of China about the stock market correction being over. I take those obviously with a pinch of salt, but nonetheless, yes, it was up more than 3% today.
Okay, let's have a look at the European movers. Quite an interesting pair today.
Yes, we start with the German power utilities. In this instance, we look at E.ON, ticker EOAN in Germany, €9.76, up just over 7% this morning, where they have been higher. They and RWE have rallied very sharply as the German's finance ministry says that the companies do have enough money to fund the nuclear legacy issues which they're going to be settled with. It's slightly surprising when the German government comes out and says that rather than the companies themselves. Evidently there's a 120-page report that goes along with this comment. I haven't had the chance to read that yet, but make of it what you will. And staying with sort of a European regulatory and government's theme, Rolls-Royce in London, RRLN, the ticker there, 721.5p, down 4.5%, and the FT has an article today suggesting that EU regulators are launching an inquiry into aircraft maintenance and servicing contracts, and Rolls-Royce is said to be one of the companies that has received a questionnaire from the authorities on that subject. There's no not much more in the way of specifics about that, but obviously servicing and maintenance.
A dark cloud over Rolls-Royce.
Yeah, because it's a big part of their business. Although I have to say, I'm not sure, what the EU would expect. I mean, if you've got Rolls-Royce engines on your plane, you're probably going to want them serviced by Rolls-Royce, aren't you? So anyway, we'll no doubt hear more about that in the coming days, but they're down 4.5% on that news.
Right, M&A rumours and movers.
Well, it was a rumour, and between leaving the office and arriving here for the show, it's actually become a fact. Dell has launched a bid to buy EMC Corporation, that's ticker EMC in the US, $29.90 pre-market, up around 7.3% in a deal worth more than $50 billion. In fact, as the details have come out, the total value of the deal will be around $67 billion. Dell was thought likely to offer around $27 cash per share as part of a bigger offer of $33. In fact, I think it's $33.15 in total. EMC was to be offered a go shop option to allow them to find a better offer if one exists, and that really has just been included in their to appease Elliott Fund Management, who are the activist investor with a big stake in EMC. And Dell was said to be talking to a wide range of banks about financing options, because it would need to raise around $40 billion to complete the deal.
I was going to say, I wonder where they get the money from, but obviously it's an obvious question from a bank.
It sounds like they've been able to do it. Just for people who may not be aware, EMC is a major player in data storage and virtualization. They own a company called VMware, which is synonymous with virtualization. And Dell itself was taken private by its founder Michael Dell and the private equity firm Silver Lake Partners in a $25 billion deal 2 years ago. So he's got some decent backers there in Silver Lake. Thinking here is that the combination of EMC storage and virtualization and Dell's exposure to servers would allow Dell to compete much more effectively with IBM and Hewlett Packard, who are the sort of the giants in that sort of all-round computer service space. So the EMC board have come out in favour of the deal. I suppose we'll have to wait and see if Elliott will accept it, but likely as not, this is probably going to be a done deal, unless perhaps IBM, Hewlett Packard or Microsoft want to step into the fray and offer something better, but with a board recommendation, that seems unlikely to me at this stage.
Right, so we're sure that Dell are not biting off more than they can chew.
We don't know that entirely. It will be the largest tech merger ever, so it's a substantial deal. And obviously, when you hear things like the largest ever, you think back to the ones that have gone before that haven't worked out, but we should have to wait and see.
Okay, right. Okay, on to the US data points.
Okay, well, as you rightly said, it's Columbus Day in the US today, so there are no data releases there this afternoon. However, the Fed Governor's Roadshow continues, and John Williams, who's president of the San Francisco Fed, is due to speak on monetary policy around 3:30 London time today. And then in terms of data points to look forward to later in the week, tomorrow we have retail sales for September alongside US producer prices for September. And then on Thursday, weekly jobless claims and the Empire State Manufacturing Survey. Of course, the Empire State Survey's missed estimates by a country mile the last 2 times out, so people will be watching that one very closely indeed to see if we can get back to some semblance
of normality. That's right, yes, it was a bit of a scary moment there.
Yeah.
Right, okay, let's go on to the pre-market movers and levels in the US.
Okay, well, as it's a Monday and a slow Monday at that, I've gone for a couple of movers from Friday's session that people might not have picked up on. First of all, Autodesk Incorporated, that's ADSK in the US, $51.57 they closed on Friday, up 9%. And the company had presented at a meeting hosted by JP Morgan. What I think is interesting here is that not only did they have a 9% rally on the back of the comments they made there, but they also did it on 3 times the average daily volume. So you've got a substantial gain and substantial turnover in the stock. So I think that'll be one to keep an eye on from here as well. And then GoPro, our other stocks to look at today, GPRO is the ticker there in the US, $29.08 they closed on Friday. They are up modestly again pre-market on note. They're up around 5.3% on Friday. The stock bounced really, a certain amount of relief here as they announced their next earnings date, but didn't warn on profits, and everybody had thought that they'd come out with another profits warning. Bear in mind here, the stock has been down more than 50% in the last 2 months. So an 5% rally is good, but it's minuscule in terms of the fall they've had. But at least they didn't warn again, and perhaps that one may bounce a bit further from here.
Right, okay, so one to watch, but not necessarily as a bullish situation.
No.
Right, levels to watch on the indices and the markets?
Yeah, well, there have been a few, obviously whilst I was away, we had 8 straight winning days, I believe, in the FTSE, so 1 or 2.
Do you think there was any connection between you leaving and the market rallying?
I hadn't thought about that, but perhaps there was. 63.43 now is our new downside level in the FTSE, and we watch 64.30 to the upside. It looks like we're breaking that that 8-day winning streak today, but we'll see what happens on the close. For the DAX, back above 10,000, so 10,107 now is the level to watch on the downside. That was the low of the day. Plays 10,210 to the upside. And for the US pair, the S&P, we're watching 2,007 on the downside, plays 2,020 on the upside. Didn't expect to come back to a 2,000 handle there, I must say. And then in the Dow, 16,990 is our downside level, plays 17,110. So we're creeping back towards pre-correction territory here in both of those. As far as currencies are concerned, whilst I've been away, the story's predominantly been about dollar weakness. So we're now 113.80 on the downside for euro US dollar, plays 114.12 to the upside. The Aussie dollar has continued to rally, so we now watch 73.44 on the downside, plays 73.75 to the upside there. Dollar yen is, what I can see, stayed pretty static. 120.07 now is our downside level, plays 120.35 to the upside. I think we're really waiting for the 30th of October in the Bank of Japan meeting for something to happen there. And then in cable, 153.30 to the downside, plays 153.70 to the upside, and obviously that will be sensitive to the inflation data tomorrow.
Okay, well, what's in focus today?
Well, I thought we'd look basically at the dollar index. We talked about dollar weakness being the focus of the last week, but dollar index actually is sold off sharply since the highs were posted on this measure back in March 15. We traded up to 99.186 then. Fed caution on US rate rises has probably possibly been helping to drive this move lower in dollar index over the last few weeks. Bear in mind now that the FOMC, the Federal Open Markets Committee, is just 2 more meetings in 2015. They meet in October and they meet again in December, but not in November. And it seems to me, just looking at this relatively simplistic candlestick chart of dollar index, a retest of the 200-day EMA line, which is this red line here, looks quite likely. Comes in at 94.46. We closed marginally above there on Friday, but the trend would still seem to be down. It's a channel at the top, and indeed we've sold off over the last couple of sessions. We may also, if we do test back through 94.46, test to 93.85 and then down to 92.47. 92.47 being the low seen on the 22nd of January 2015. So we could, in theory, be about to sort of take out most of the gains in dollar index for 2015 if we follow that trajectory, which obviously flies in the face of the idea that we've had a strong dollar through 2015. So that, if we do start to test into that level, maybe it will be time to start thinking about a contrarian attitude towards emerging markets and some of the markets that have been hampered by that stronger dollar.
But don't you think the penny literally has dropped in terms of people realising that the data isn't right and the Fed doesn't really want to raise rates anyway?
I think people are coming around to that opinion. Yes.
Hence gold and mining stocks and other things like that. So there's a little bit of that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But it's funny, they just took that last non-farm payroll number really just to shake people out of their
so they're sort of
slumber.
Exactly. Yeah. They've woken up and they've now realised that everything in the garden is far from rosy. So yeah.
Okay, on that note, Darren Sinden, market commentator for Admiral Markets, thanks for coming in today, and we'll be back on Friday with the Wall Street Crossover Show.